Welcome to Bills by the Numbers, presented by FanDuel. Make every moment more. The Titans are on deck. How might the matchup with the familiar AFC foe be different this time around? We dive into it. Buffalo's defensive line exceeded expectations in Week 1. What do their numbers from that performance tell us about that group going forward? And ESPN analytics writer Seth Walder helps us out with the Bills' pass rush win rate. Say that really fast. Is it Monday night yet? It's an exciting wait until Week 2, Bills versus Titans, and we will examine it closely in a number of ways here on Bills by the Numbers, where we let the stats tell you where the Bills are at. Bills Wall of Famer Steve Tasker, Bills insider Chris Brown with you, and we come out of the blocks with a familiar opponent for the Bills and the Tennessee Titans. These two teams have met in the regular season each of the last 5 years. If you pull out the 2020 matchup that got moved to a random Tuesday because of COVID issues, 3 of their last 4 meetings have been decided by a total of 11 points. The games, for the most part, have been very competitive. Are we expecting another nip-and-tuck game, or has there been some separation, Steve, between these two teams over this past off-season?
Well, I think the Bills got better. I don't think there's any question about it. They got better on both sides of the line of scrimmage up front, and I think that's going to make them better on the edges, no question. And I think Tennessee, there's some question marks there as to whether they got better. There's no way you can think they got A.J. Brown and Julio Jones taken off their roster and they got better. But they've been winning. So if you take the edge off the Tennessee and you give the edge to Buffalo, it may be another close game with Buffalo having the edge in this game rather than Tennessee.
I think it was more subtraction than addition for the Titans this past offseason due to the giant $87.5 million contract extension they handed pass rusher Harold Landry, and unfortunately Landry's gone for the season. ACL injury before Week 1, that is a huge loss for them, and I think they're depending on a lot of rookies to kind of fill the void for them in the starting lineup. When you look at it, their starting right tackle is a rookie in Nicolas Petit-Frere, if I'm saying that right, Frere. Not good with the French. Took a lot of Spanish in school, no French. Roger McCreary is their starting nickel, their second-round pick, and Treylon Burks is their top slot receiver, the first-round draft choice. So they also have a rookie punter and a rookie punt returner. So there's a lot to depend on there and maintain your standing in a stacked AFC conference. So I think there has been some separation. I think the Titans have kind of slid back to the pack a little bit, and the Bills have kind of pushed forward into the forefront with the Chiefs. And we should mention, in the meetings with the Bills and Titans in the Sean McDermott era, the two teams have pretty much split it down the middle for the most part, so 2 wins apiece. In Buffalo's 2 victories, they grabbed the lead first, relinquished it for a total of just under 5 minutes. In their 2 losses, they never had the lead for very long. So with last year's game, very much a back-and-forth affair, 6 of the Titans' 12 victories last year, Steve, by 3 points or less.
I think that's a sign of a really good coaching staff. In the first weekend of the season, it's been highlighted about how some of the coaching decisions late in games were blunders.
Yeah. I know you like Vrabel.
Mike Vrabel never does that. I mean, they always have the right decision maker on the sidelines. They always do the right thing and actually give themselves an edge in certain situations. So, yeah, you're not going to get any breaks from Vrabel and his crew and their game management like some of the teams did this first weekend.
Okay, but knowing that they typically grind out games and their playing style would indicate that's how they have to win more often than not, run the hell out of the ball, play solid defense, and grind out victories, what can we say maybe about the Bills if they can get a lead early, force the Titans offense to play catch-up by playing a style they're not used to playing?
Yeah, let's face it. The Bills like piling it on. I mean, when they start getting them, when they find something in matchups and all of that, Ken Dorsey and in the past Brian Dable, the Bills with Josh, they sling it. I would say this. I would say Tennessee will do their best, and it sounds crazy. I wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee does their best to give Josh Allen a run game himself and then take their shots at him, try and beat him up a little bit. I think they will invite Josh to run the football because they know this. If he stands in the pocket and slings it, they're done because they'll rack up too many points for the Titans to keep up with the running game. So I think that's going to be one of the ways teams get after the Bills is to invite the run game hope Josh Allen keeps it in his hands, and then take your shots.
Still, all that being said, I think getting up early on the Titans is an achievable goal for Buffalo. I realize the Titans are going to be motivated coming in here after they gave a game away to the Giants last week. You don't want to start the season 0-2 in this stacked conference for sure. And ironically enough, the Titans were up 13-0 on the Giants early last week and blew the lead because they couldn't stop the run.
Right.
Saquon Barkley ran wild. They gave up 238 yards on the ground to the Giants, a team that threw the ball just 21 times last week. I don't see the Titans as a come-from-behind team, so I'd very much like to see the Bills get up on the scoreboard early and then maybe pull Tennessee out of that run-first philosophy. And to do that, Steve, Buffalo's defensive front is going to have to perform in a much different way than they did last week. You know, knocking Matthew Stafford all over the yard, hitting him 22 times on 41 dropbacks. I don't think Tannehill's dropping back 41 times in this game. Derrick Henry.
If he does, the game's going the way you said. The Bills are going to get up, and Tannehill's going to have to back off. I think if they throw it 40 times also, you're right, first and second down are going to be run stuffs for the Bills' defense.
That's Daquan Jones, Tim Settle, and Jordan Phillips. Those guys.
That's right. Those guys have got to stand up. They're going to get pushed around, and the Titans have to run the football to be effective offensively. We know that. And like you said, their new slot guy, Phillips, is a first-year player. They've got Treylon Burks, who's a first-year player. I mean, they're depending on a lot of young guys, and the Bills are a team that's going to put them in some spots, particularly with their secondary and their safeties, where it's going to be tough to make hay in the passing game. But even more so if you get into those third and longs. So the Bills' defense is good. There's no question about it. They're a really good group. And Tennessee's going to have to play really well to score points on them. And the way the Bills' offense is clicking, you got to give the edge to Buffalo in this, but I don't want to go too far down that road thinking this is going to be a double-digit win for Buffalo because I've just seen Tennessee play tough too many times.
Yeah, they're a gritty team. They keep games close. The question here is, does the Bills' revamped run front fare better than they have in the recent past? We saw the pass rush fare better in Week 1. Does the run front fare better here in Week 2? Because back in 2019, with Jordan Phillips on this roster, they held Derrick Henry to 78 yards on 20 carries, 3.9 average, tight game. Titans did not have to move away from their run game since it's a one-score game throughout. And knowing Phillips is back, you got Daquan Jones, who knows Henry inside and out, having been his teammate, and Tim Settle, whose strength, I believe, is run defense. I think the Bills should have a better performance against Henry this time around. You know, knowing their offensive line, too, is still getting their legs under them. Roger Saffold isn't there. He's here. David Quessenberry isn't there. He's here. So they're also plugging holes with rookies.
Right. And I'll say this, too. Already it's begun. I mean, Jordan Phillips and Tim Settle and some of these guys have been spouting off on social media, and so has Taylor Lewan, left tackle for the Tennessee Titans.
Oh, God,
they've had a little bit of a conversation already on social media. It's going to be a contest. But, 2019, 20 carries for Derrick Henry for 78 yards and 3.9 average.
You'll live with that, right? If you're the Bills, you take that.
Absolutely, because I think 20 carries is a lot. I'd love to see it if he'd have like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 or 5 of those carries be for 0 or negative yards too. Get him in the backfield. That's a tough row to hoe, and that scares people off the running game really quickly when you do that. But that's what they're going to be up against, and we'll see. You can bet the Tennessee will run at Tim Settle and Jordan Phillips and Daquan Jones down inside. You can bet that Tennessee is going to run at the corners, run at the edge of that defense.
So now you're talking edge setting. So you wonder this
Vaughn
week,
is
Shaq
Groot
Lawson up because he's a good edge setter? He might be. He was down in Week 1.
Rousseau's a good edge setter. Vaughn's a good edge setter, but you got to have 2 more behind him if you're going to rotate those guys in.
Yeah.
Boogie might be the guy in. But that's going to be the thing. I think they're going to run off outside the tackles a lot this year, or at least stretch it and then come back at it. They might do a lot of this pin and pull stuff where they get the wide receivers lined up tight and crash down on the end of the line of scrimmage and then bring the lineman from the inside out and kick out that way.
Robert Woods is a good blocking receiver.
Robert Woods is excellent at that, but having Robert Woods as your number one receiver at this point, it gives the edge to Buffalo's secondary. So I'm confident that the Bills are going to know they're going to put on their big boy pads and come in and expect, a belly full of the run game.
We'll discuss Bills-Titans and the battle at the line of scrimmage a bit later when ESPN analytics writer Seth Walder joins us to discuss pass rush win rate for the Bills and the Titans from Week 1. But we move along now to the numbers game where Steve will be tasked, do you like that? Tasked?
Good.
With providing answers to these recent Bills-Titans matchups. Here we go. Question number 1. In the 4 Bills-Titans meetings in the McDermott era, Steve, how many times did the team that scored first win the game? 4 meetings. How many times did the team that scored first win the game?
All 4.
And you would be correct.
Yeah.
2 wins apiece for each team. All 4 times the team that scored first won the matchup. Get on the board, Bills, on Monday night. Question number 2. In the Bills' 2 wins over the last 4 meetings against the Titans, what was their third down conversion percentage in the 2 victories, if you had to guess? I realize this is a blind guess, but in their 2 victories, what would you guess their third down conversion percentage to be? I'll give you a range of 5% leeway.
All right, I'll say 60%.
And you would be terribly off. Listen to this, Steve. 31% conversion rate in their 2 wins.
They won those games.
8 for 26.
I'm still thinking about the 90% they had last week, thinking that's pretty
Now,
good.
listen, here, this will make your head spin even more. In Buffalo's 2 losses to the Titans, their third down conversion rate was 70%, 21 of 30. So,
Wait, I thought you just said it was 30%.
In their 2 losses, it was 70.
In their losses, it was 70%.
Is that amazing?
Wait, it's backwards?
It's backwards. Because, number 1, their 2 wins were earlier in the McDermott era before the offense
before
really
Josh
took off.
Really took off.
And the defense kind of held them in and they won games. And then when their offense took off, they lost. They lost, what was it, 34-31? They're moving the ball all over the place. And they lost that stupid Tuesday night game, 42 to whatever.
I knew that game was going to be a loss before it happened.
70% conversion in those 2 games. They were 21 of 30 on third down. Amazing. Question 3. How many plays of 20 yards or more did the Bills have in their 2 wins over the Titans? Now, you know they didn't convert a whole lot on third down in those 2 wins. How many big plays did they have, do you think, in their 2 wins over the Titans?
I'll say 2.
Dead on the money, Steve. They had 2.
Yeah, I knew that.
Meanwhile, in their 2 losses, they had 6.
Yeah.
It's all backwards.
I know,
It's all
this is
wonky.
crazy. All right.
Question 4. Who provided the game-winning points in the Bills' win over the Titans in 2018?
Duke Johnson. No, Duke Williams.
It was not Duke Williams. It was Stephen Hauschka
Oh,
with a 46-yard field goal at the gun to win 13-12. That was here in Buffalo. Question 5. Who provided the game-winning points in the Bills' win over the Titans in 2019?
Duke Williams.
Duke Williams. There you go. 7-yard
I got it.
touchdown
I knew
pass
that
from
one.
Josh Allen with 9:46 in the 4th quarter. If we remember, Steve, the only reason the Bills won that game 14-7, there was a certain kicker who missed 4 field goals. He missed from 50, 36, had a 33-yarder blocked, and a missed 53-yarder, and the Titans lose 14-7 instead of winning 19-14 if he made all of those. Do you remember the kicker by any chance? Bonus question.
No.
He was cut the next day.
Yeah.
He's a familiar kicker, veteran kicker in the league. I think he's still kicking right now.
Who was it? Al Del Greco.
It was it was not Al Del Greco. It was Cairo Santos.
Cairo Santos.
How about that? 4, 3 misses, and 1 block. Darryl Johnson, former Bills defensive lineman with the blocked field goal on that. All right, that was fun trip down memory lane here in the numbers game. Not a bad job, Steve.
Thank you.
All right. Good work there.
That was
After an impressive primetime performance by Buffalo's revamped defensive line, we turn now to ESPN analytics writer Seth Walder, to break it down by player when it comes to pass rush win rate and how the Titans may test the Bills' defensive front differently in Week 2. Here is Seth. All right, Seth, let's start here. The Bills come firing out of the blocks with huge pass rush success with their newly revamped D-line. 7 sacks, 15 quarterback hits on 41 Matthew Stafford dropbacks. That's more than half the time he's getting hit. But the task is much different this week with a run-first team in Tennessee. So you look at the team pass rush win rate that you guys put out this week on ESPN.com, and the Bills are ranked 10th as a team, 49%. After 7 sacks and 15 quarterback hits, I realize some fans might be like, how in the world are they 10th? Can you just map that out and lay that out for laymen like us?
Yeah, sure. So when we look at pass rush win rate on the team level, the question is, did someone beat their blocker within 2.5 seconds? And that time element is really crucial. And that's usually when we have a sort of discrepancy with sacks or something like that, that's what's going on. It's going to be correlated certainly with sacks, but you can get sacks by, after 2.5 seconds or without beating your man within 2.5 seconds. And a lot of times if you have, good coverage or you're facing a quarterback that holds the ball, that can happen. Like Justin Fields was sacked a bunch of times this week, or he had a high sack rate this week, and the Bears had the highest pass block win rate of any team this week. That can happen. Now, over the course of the season, I think you tend to see those things match up a decent amount. But yeah, I think still though there was also some really encouraging signs. Even if you look at the pass rush win rates, like Von Miller had a 47% individual. Pass rush win rate. That's extremely high. So, I think 10th is low compared to what I think we would all maybe expect just having watched that game, right?
What is an individual, win rate percentage? I mean, put this into context. What are, if a guy has a 15 sack season, what's the percentage you're kind of looking at?
I think typically over the course of a year, the very highest edge rushers will be in the high 20s. So I think you're going to look at a TJ Watt or a Myles Garrett over the course of a year will be in that kind of like 28, 27, 29 range as the very top, right? Now, that's over the course of the season. In any game, for any stat, really, you can have everyone's going to have games where they exceed what's possible over the course of the season. And in fact, Von Miller didn't lead the league in pass rush win rate from edge. Micah Parsons was at an insane 60%. So to have a player in a week reach 47%, that's not like that shocking, but it's a great sign for them, especially coming off of what was Von Miller had the best pass rush win rate postseason of any player in the history of the metric last year. It's only 5 years old, but still. I think you have to be very happy if you're a Bills fan about what you saw out of Von Miller in week 1.
Yeah, no question. And I think what's interesting going forward here with the Bills' week 2 matchup against Tennessee is you have 2 defensive tackles who tend to win a good deal in pass rush win rate in Jordan Phillips for the Bills, Jeffrey Simmons for the Titans. Both of those guys were in the top 7 this past week. I saw one of your posts on Twitter at Seth Walder, for those that don't know. And it makes for a very interesting competition, I guess, for those of us watching the game. Harold Landry, though, is a key missing part of the equation. Now out for the season. I know Jeffrey Simmons can dominate seemingly whenever he wants to, but without Harold Landry there, I got to imagine his task is going to be tougher to keep this kind of pass rush win rate up, right?
Absolutely. Simmons is a guy that actually his numbers, while he had an excellent week 1, his numbers have not always matched perception. We've been a little lower on him typically than I think his reputation for what it's worth. I think, it's really hard to generate a lot of pass rush success as just kind of like a solo defensive tackle. You guys asked about the scale, right? Like for pass rush win rate,
Yeah.
and I talked about Watt and Garrett. Well, it's a different scale when you're talking about defensive tackles. They just win less often. There's more traffic down there. You're just going to have less success. And so, yeah, it's awesome when you have a guy like Phillips, when he can be a complementary piece to Von Miller. When it's your top guy, unless it's Aaron Donald who puts up top tier edge rate numbers from defensive tackle, I think it's way harder. I will say this: the one positive I would take away from Tennessee, I think losing Harold Landry is a huge loss for them. Bud Dupree, I looked at his pass rush get off, which is basically the time to cross line of scrimmage when you're pass rushing. And he last year dropped significantly in that. He was way slower than he'd been in 2020 when he tore his ACL at the end.
Right, coming off the injury, yeah.
Exactly. Now this is one game, so who knows? But in one game this year, that pass rush win rate, that pass rush get off number was back to his 2020 levels. And so maybe, he was coming off that injury, didn't have quite the jump, and maybe he's getting back. But I do think, that's not a pass rush that overall is going to scare you without Harold Landry there.
I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole with stats in this, but is there some sort of algorithm or statistical analysis you can put together where if you've got a player like Von Miller or T.J. Watt or Micah Parsons or somebody like that on the edge, that the win rate of the other guys is at it gets to a threshold where all of a sudden, they become a force or dominant. You know what I mean? If they're a mixture of win rates and percentages at those D lines that you found that if you got a great guy, but if you got one other guy or two other guys or three other guys that are at this threshold, everything changes. Is there stuff like that you can dissect and, kind of predict?
That's a great question. I don't know that I have a perfect answer for win rates themselves. What I will say is this: I found in looking at studying sacks quite a bit. I think this is obvious, but it's still interesting to me when you see it borne out in the numbers, where players have a higher sack expectation when they have other teammates on their team who get a lot of pass rush wins. And so, when you look at a guy like Leonard Floyd with the Rams, he is clearly benefiting from Aaron Donald. The other way that this can sometimes play out is double teams, or the lack thereof for some players. I think double teams overall are a mixture of a lot of factors. So the highest double team players is not necessarily the best players. It has a lot to do with your alignment and the situation and whether your team's blitzing. But they certainly do draw more attention. Like Aaron Donald draws more attention to himself, and that does free up other players. I think you do tend to see that where you have, if you have a really good defensive tackle pass rusher, he might soak up more blockers, and it can just present more one-on-ones for your edge guys.
Last one, Seth, from me. The Bills, as we mentioned, have a much different task with their defensive front with Derrick Henry than they did with Matthew Stafford last week. We look at the team run-stop win rate after 1 week, and the Bills are ranked 19th at 30%. Is that cause to panic, or is that one-game sample not nearly enough to kind of hang your hat on and worry about anything?
I wouldn't panic about it. I mean, I think I had a predicted run-stop win rate that I do for some fantasy stuff going into the year, and I had the Bills kind of middle of the pack. So one game that sort of matched up. I'm not sure it's going to be a strength long-term for them, but I wouldn't be that worried about it. You're not going to face that many teams like Tennessee. And frankly, if teams are running on you as their primary form of attack, I think teams will take that all day. It's just less efficient than if you're the Bills, wouldn't you rather face Derrick Henry than a Patrick Mahomes? I think so. I think that's just not the worst problem to have. I think if you're Buffalo.
Yeah, no question. The league is it's not run and stop the run anymore. Right. Although occasionally, the Bills got into it last year in the 40-mile-per-hour wind game where you just can't get a stop. And then it turns into 1957, and you watch these guys 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And And moving from there, and Seth, just one last one for me. These have you got is pass rush win rate? I mean, is that your favorite stat about pass pressure or pass defense, or is there a coverage stat that you like that in conjunction with this? But is pass rush win rate, is that the kind of standard right now?
Well, firstly, as someone that's said the words pass rush win rate on air many times, I can empathize with that R and W, which are
Right.
coming into conflict with one another. Yeah, I guess it's probably my favorite. Yeah, I think what I love about it and have always loved about it since we created it was I just felt like when we evaluate pass rushers, we're looking at sacks, and even if you're a top guy, and sacks are great, it's important. But we're talking about, maybe 15 plays over the course of your entire season. I want to know what happened on the other plays. And we know that you can have an impact on the game when you're not getting sacks. And we see this output. If you look at pass rush win rates, or you look at it like the more players that win defensively on a given play, the worse offensive production is on that play. I think that's intuitive, that's obvious, but again, it's one of those things where you don't know that's going to be the case until you see it borne out in the numbers. So I have a lot of favorite stats. I'm not sure they're like my children. I can't pick one over the other, but I am a big win rate believer for sure.
Awesome.
Seth, thanks very much for the time. Thanks
Seth.
for dicing up the numbers with us as always. We appreciate it. We'll catch up with you later in the season.
Thank you, guys.
All right, time for your chance to win $1 million with FanDuel's free pick'em style game High-Low. Pick teams for 4 different stat categories that you think will score the highest or lowest for the week. The more you get right, the more you can win. Get them all correct, and you could take home $1 million. Just go to FanDuel.com/high-low to play. Steve and I make these picks each week, and I'm going to take the high-low on points. So high for me for points this week. I'm going to go with the Colts after rolling up a ton of yards last week, but just 20 points in their tie with Houston. They've got Jacksonville, and while that defense is better this year, I think Indianapolis has a chance to really explode on the Jaguars this week. So Colts high for points. Low for points, I'm going with a bit of an obvious one here. The Dallas Cowboys have to play an angry Cincinnati Bengals team after they blew their Week 1 game in overtime against Pittsburgh, and the Cowboys will be doing it with Cooper Rush at quarterback. I think points are going to be hard to come by for the Cowboys. So Dallas, low for points. Steve, you got high-low on passing yards.
Passing yards, I'm going to go with the Rams that we just saw this last week. Really surprised at how much the Rams struggled to run the football last week. Not so much now that I kind of got a little bit more faith in the Bills' defense. But the Falcons' defense is not the Buffalo Bills. And I think L.A. is going to throw it a bunch. I think they're going to throw it all over the yard this week. So in an effort to bounce back from that humbling Week 1 loss, I think Stafford bounces back in a big way. Then for low yards, for passing, I got to go with the Cleveland Browns. They've been a good rushing team for a few years. They're going to lean on that. And against the New York Football Jets, they're going to have success on the ground. Jacoby Brissett won't need to do too much. So for the low on passing yards, I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns.
All right. I'm going a bit off the radar here as far as high for rushing yards. Taking a flyer on the Detroit Lions. They ran all over the Eagles last week, who have a good defensive front. DeAndre Swift had a big day last week. I think he can do it again when they play Washington. The Commanders are an underachieving defensive front. So I'm rolling the dice with Detroit there. Then low for rushing yards, I'm going with the Raiders. Their offensive line is simply not good enough. They couldn't run against the Chargers last week, and I don't think it gets much better against the Cardinals. So low for rushing yards, the Raiders.
Mm-hmm. All right, for sacks, I'm going to take the 49ers. Geno Smith is going to come back down to earth this week. They struggled in the second half even last week. They won in Denver on Monday night, but Nick Bosa and company are going to come in, and they're going to have success against those guys. They know them extremely well. They're in the same division. So high for sacks is San Francisco 49ers for me. The low for sacks, I'm going to take Green Bay. They lost Zadarius Smith in free agency. They had trouble getting to Kirk Cousins last week. And Justin Fields is a difficult guy to catch, So even if they have some success in the pass rush, Fields will just walk away from him. He'll leave the pocket early as well. So I think the Packers will get the lowest in sacks.
All right. That is FanDuel's free-to-play high-low game. Make sure you get on board and take your swings in these high-low categories for NFL Week 2. Our closing figure this week concerns Buffalo's game on Monday night. It's been a while since the Bills won a Monday night game at home. How long, you ask? The last time is almost 28 years ago to the day. September 26th, 1994, the Bills beat the Broncos 27-20. Thurman Thomas and Carwell Gardner combined for 3 touchdowns in the win. Do you remember anything from that game, Steve? Because you played in it.
I remember Thurman and Carwell, but I don't remember them scoring 3 touchdowns. Thurman and Carwell, they're friends of mine.
Thurman had 2. Carwell had 1.
I know I had great seats for that game. I was standing right next to Marv.
but that's how long it's been. 28
Yeah,
years
it's been
since
a
a
long
Monday
time.
night home win. We'll see if the Bills can do it against the Titans on Monday night in Week 2. And that'll do it for this edition of Bills by the Numbers. Please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use so you know when our next episode drops. Just put it in the search bar, Bills by the Numbers. And remember, when you need to know about the Bills, you need to check Bills by the Numbers. For Steve Tasker, I'm Chris Brown. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week, everybody.